Commander Jiho stood on the bridge of his hunting ship and looked at the stars through the big window. The metal floor under his feet felt cold, but he did not mind it. His thick reptilian skin could handle much worse than cold metal. He was a Vex. Warrior and the Vex were the best hunters in the whole galaxy. They had been hunting dangerous creatures for thousands of years, and they never failed to catch what they were looking for. His ship was called the Bloodfang, and it was painted in dark, red colors that looked like dried blood. The ship was built for one thing, only hunting down targets across space. It had the fastest engines in the galaxy and weapons that could destroy entire planets if needed. But Jiho did not like to use the big weapons. He preferred to catch his targets alive when possible. It was more fun that way, and it showed how skilled his hunting pack was. Jiho looked at his 3 crew members who stood around the control room. Each one was a master at what they did, and together they made the most feared hunting team in known space. Minho was the tracker, and he could follow any energy trail across the stars. His eyes were different from normal Vex eyes. They glowed with a soft blue light and could see things that others could not see. He had tracked over 100 dangerous creatures and never lost a single trail. Tyke was the strategist, and his mind worked like a computer. He could plan the perfect trap for any target and think of every possible way the hunt could go wrong. His scales were darker than the others, and he moved very slowly and carefully. He never rushed into anything without thinking about it first. Tyke had planned over 200 successful hunts, and his strategies were studied. By other hunting packs across the galaxy, Kyung was the enforcer, and he was the strongest of them all. His muscles were huge even for a Vex warrior, and his claws could cut through steel like it was paper. When the target was finally cornered, it was Kyung who would make the final capture. He enjoyed the fear in his target's eyes when they realized they could not escape anymore. Kyung had personally captured over 50 of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. The 4 of them had worked together for many years, and they knew each other better than family. They could communicate without words and move together like they shared the same mind. This was what made them so good at hunting. The Vex were naturally pack hunters, but Jiho's team had taken it to a level that other Vex could only dream about. A message came through the ship's communication system. It was from the Galactic Council, and Jiho knew it would be their next hunting assignment. The Council only contacted his team when they had something really dangerous that needed to be caught. Other hunting teams got the easy jobs, but Jiho's pack got the targets that made other hunters afraid. Jiho pressed a button and the message played on the main screen. A tall alien with gray skin and big black eyes appeared. The alien was a council member, and he looked very serious. Jiho had worked for this alien before and knew he only called when something really bad was happening. "We have a problem, Commander Jiho," the alien said in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. "A human ship has escaped from Earth before the quarantine could be completed. The ship is carrying 1 human survivor, and it was last seen heading toward the Outer Rim colonies. You and your pack have been chosen to track down this target and capture it alive if possible." Jiho felt excited when he heard this. A human target was something new for his pack. They had hunted many different species, but never a human before. Humans were supposed to be very dangerous, which was why their whole planet had been quarantined. The Council had decided that humans were too violent and unpredictable to be allowed to travel freely in space, so they had surrounded Earth with a force field and kept all humans trapped on their home planet. But somehow 1 human had escaped, and that was a big problem. If other species learned that humans could break free from quarantine, they might start to panic. The Council needed this human caught quickly and quietly before word got out that the quarantine had failed. The alien continued talking and gave them more details about their target. The human was named Do-Yun, and his ship was small and fast, but not very well armed. Scans showed that he had some basic weapons, but nothing that could threaten a proper hunting ship. The human seemed to be running scared and was making random jumps through hyperspace like he did not know where he was going. "This sounds easy," Minho said as he looked at the data. "About their target. One scared human in a small ship should not be hard to catch. Even if humans are supposed to be dangerous, this one is clearly panicking and making mistakes." Take nodded his head slowly as he studied the information. "I agree, the hunt should be finished quickly. The human's ship is leaving an easy trail to follow, and his erratic movement pattern suggests he has no real plan. We should be able to corner him within a few days." Kyung made a low growling sound that meant he was happy. "This will be fun," he said while flexing his huge claws. "I want to see what makes humans so dangerous that the council had to lock them all away. Maybe this one will put up a good fight before I catch him." Jiho smiled and showed his sharp teeth. He was confident that this hunt would be like all the others, quick and successful. The Vex were the best hunters in the galaxy, and humans were just another species of prey. It did not matter how dangerous humans were supposed to be. One lone human could not possibly be a threat to 4 experienced Vex warriors. The Bloodfang started moving toward the coordinates where the human ship had been seen. Last Minho began setting up his tracking equipment to follow the energy trail left by the humans. Engines Tayek started planning their approach routes and thinking about the best ways to corner their target. Kyung checked his weapons and made sure his capture gear was ready as they traveled through hyperspace toward the outer rim. Jiho thought about what the council had told them about humans. The report said that humans were extremely violent and that they fought wars constantly on their home planet. They were also supposed to be very unpredictable and did not follow normal patterns of behavior. But Jiho had heard similar things about other species. They had hunted before, and it never made much difference in the end. All creatures were the same when they were being hunted. They ran, they hid, they panicked, and eventually they made mistakes that allowed the hunters to catch them. Humans might be different in some ways, but they were still just another species of prey. The Vex had evolved to be perfect predators, and no amount of human violence or unpredictability could change. That basic fact, Jiho looked out at the stars again and felt the familiar excitement of starting a new hunt. Soon they would have their target cornered and the hunt would be over. Then they could return to the council and collect their payment before moving on to their next assignment. It was a good life, and Jiho could not imagine doing anything else. The Bloodfang continued moving through hyperspace, following the trail left by Do Hyun's ship. Jiho and his pack had no idea that they were not chasing scared prey, but walking into the most dangerous trap any of them had ever faced. The hunt was beginning, but they did not know who the real hunter was. The Bloodfang floated in empty space far from the mining station where Kyung had died. Jiho sat in his command chair and stared at the tactical display showing the station where their packmate had been killed. His claws dug deep scratches into the metal armrests as anger and confusion fought inside his mind. No Vex warrior had ever been killed by prey before, and especially not by a single human. Working alone, Minho was running detailed scans of the mining station from a safe distance. His tracking equipment showed all the modifications that Do Hyun had made to the facility. Chemical dispensers had been installed in the air recycling system. Explosive charges had been placed at key structural points. Gravity plates had been rewired to create areas where movement would be difficult. The entire station had been turned into a deadly trap. "This does not make sense," Minho said as he studied the scanner data. The modifications to that station would have taken months to complete. How could one human do all of this work while being chased by hunting packs across the galaxy? He should not have had time to prepare such an elaborate trap. Take was analyzing the tactical data and trying to understand what had gone wrong with their hunt. The human had somehow known exactly how Vex senses worked and had prepared countermeasures for each of their abilities. The chemical compounds in the air had been designed specifically to overwhelm enhanced Vex nervous systems. The explosive, placement showed detailed knowledge of Vex armor and its weak points. He studied us, Tag said in a quiet voice that showed how disturbed he was. This human did not just stumble onto information about our species. He researched us carefully and learned our hunting methods, our equipment, and our physiology. He knew we were coming, and he prepared for our specific pack. Jiho felt a chill run down his spine as the implications became clear. This meant their target had not been running scared through hyperspace. Instead, he had been leading them exactly where he wanted them to go. The erratic jumps and panicked behavior had all been an act to make them think he was easy prey. The human had been controlling their hunt from the very beginning. While they studied the scanner data, a new message came through their communication system. It was not from the Galactic Council or any official source. The message was coming from inside the mining station where Kyung had died. Jiho's eyes widened as he realized their target was speaking directly to them. "Hello, Jiho Minho and Taek Do-hyun's." Voice came through the speakers and sounded calm and friendly. "I am sorry about Kyung, but he was trying to kill me, so I had to defend myself. I hope you understand that I did not want to hurt anyone, but you gave me no choice." The three remaining Vex looked at each other in shock. The human knew all their names, even though they had never communicated with him before. This was impossible, unless he had somehow accessed their ship computers and personal files. But the Bloodfang had the best security systems in the galaxy, and no one should have been able to break through them. "I know this must be confusing for you," Do-hyun continued, "but I want you to understand what is really happening here. You think you are hunting me, but actually I have been studying you for weeks. I know about your previous hunts, your personal histories, and your individual weaknesses." Minho quickly checked their computer systems and found traces of unauthorized access. Someone had been inside their network for days, copying files and monitoring their communications. The intrusion was so subtle that their security systems had not detected it. The human had been watching them, while they thought they were tracking him. "You lost your first pack in a plasma storm near the Rigel system," Jiho Do-hyun said, and his words hit the Vex commander like a physical blow. "That was 15 years ago, and you blamed yourself for not predicting the solar flare that killed them. You have been trying to prove yourself ever since by taking the most dangerous hunting contracts." Jiho felt his breath catch in his throat. That information was in his personal files that should have been impossible to access. The plasma storm incident was something he had never talked about with anyone, and the guilt from losing his first pack had driven him to become the best hunter in the galaxy. "Minho, your clutch brother died in a hunting accident when you were both young warriors," Do-hyun continued. "Your enhanced tracking abilities developed after that trauma, as your mind tried to make sure you would never lose another packmate the way you lost him." Minho made a strangled sound and backed away from his console. The human was reaching into their deepest secrets and using them as weapons. No enemy had ever attacked them this way before. Physical combat they could handle, but this psychological warfare was something completely outside their experience. "Teak, you were demoted from the strategic command after a planning failure cost the lives of 12 Vex soldiers. You joined Jiho's pack because no other unit would accept a strategist with your history. You have been trying to prove that your plans can work ever since." Taek collapsed into his chair and put his head in his hands. The failed operation was the worst moment of his life, and he had spent years trying to forget about those 12 soldiers who died because of his mistakes. Now, the human was forcing him to relive that nightmare. "How does he know these things?" Jiho whispered. "The records of those incidents are classified at the highest levels of Vex command. Even we cannot access each other's complete histories without special authorization." "Have had plenty of time to research your species," Do-hyun said, as if he had heard Jiho's question. "Humans were quarantined on Earth, but we were not cut off from galactic computer networks. We have been watching and learning about every species in the galaxy for years. We know more about you than you know about yourselves. The communication ended and left, the three Vex sitting in stunned silence. Their target had just demonstrated knowledge that should have been impossible for any non-Vex to obtain. He had reached into their minds and pulled out their worst memories, then used those memories to show how helpless they really were. Jiho tried to regain control of the situation by focusing on tactical concerns. They needed to develop new strategies for dealing with this human, but every plan he considered fell apart when he tried to account for Do-hyun's unpredictable behavior. Humans did not think like other species, and their actions did not follow logical patterns. "We need to call for reinforcements," Minho said, but his voice was shaking. "This target is too dangerous for our pack to handle alone. We should request additional hunting ships and approach him with overwhelming force." No Jiho replied, though he was not sure why. He refused the suggestion. Something inside him rebelled at the idea of admitting defeat. If they called for help, it would mean acknowledging that their pack could not complete a hunt. They would be marked as failures and never receive important contracts again. Tyke was staring at his tactical displays but not really seeing them. His confidence in his strategic abilities had been shattered by Do-hyun's words. How could he plan an attack against an enemy who knew all his methods and had already countered them before the fight even began? As the three Vex struggled with their psychological wounds, they did not notice that their ship was sending a continuous data stream to an unknown receiver. Do-hyun had not only accessed their files in the past, he was monitoring their systems in real time and watching their every move. The hunter had become the hunted, but they did not yet understand how completely their roles had been reversed. The Bloodfang drifted in space while its crew tried to process what had happened to them. They had started this hunt as confident predators chasing easy prey. Now they were psychologically damaged warriors being stalked by something they could not understand. The tables had turned, and they were no longer the hunters. Days passed on the Bloodfang, and the three surviving Vex found themselves trapped in a nightmare of waiting. The ship drifted between star systems while they tried to figure out what to do next. They could not complete their hunt because their target was too dangerous to approach. They could not abandon the mission because that would mean admitting failure to the Galactic Council. They were stuck in a situation that had no good solution. Do-hyun's messages came at random times when they least expected them. Sometimes he would be silent for hours, making them think he had moved on to other things. Then suddenly his voice would fill the ship, speaking to them like an old friend who just wanted to have a conversation. The unpredictable timing made it impossible for them to prepare mentally for his psychological attacks. "Good morning," Jiho Do-hyun said one day as the Vex commander was trying to eat his breakfast. "I hope you slept well, though I imagine you are having trouble sleeping. Lately, most hunters do when they realize they have become the prey. Instead, I wanted to tell you about my home planet Earth, since you probably do not know much about human worlds." Jiho tried to ignore the voice, but found himself listening despite his efforts to block it out. Do-hyun began describing Earth in detail, talking about human cities with millions of people living in tall buildings that reached toward the sky. He described human wars where entire armies fought each other with weapons that could destroy mountains. He talked about human survival instincts and how they had evolved to fight against impossible odds. Humans are different from other species. Because we started as prey animals, Do-hyun explained. We were not apex predators, like your people. Everything on Earth tried to eat us, so we had to become clever and adaptable to survive. We learned to use tools and work together, and most importantly, we learned to never give up, even when the situation seemed hopeless. The human began telling stories about Earth history, and each story was more disturbing than the last. He described human soldiers who kept fighting even after being badly wounded. Human explorers who survived in deadly environments by eating anything they could find. Human inventors who created new weapons during wars by using whatever materials they could get. We had a saying on Earth: Do-yun continued. Never corner a human, because that is when we become most dangerous. When you trap us with no way to escape, we do not surrender. Instead, we become something much worse than what you were originally fighting. You made the mistake of hunting someone who had already been cornered by your galactic council. Minho was trying to work at his tracking station, but the human's words kept distracting him. Every time Do-yun spoke, Minho remembered his clutch brother and how he had died in that hunting accident so many years ago. The human seemed to know exactly which painful memories to mention and when to mention them for maximum emotional impact. Your clutch brother was named Baekhyun Do-yun said, as if reading Minho's thoughts. He died when you were both trying to track a wounded Xerix beast through the ice caves of Proxima 7. You were supposed to watch the left tunnel while he took the right one, but you got distracted by a false energy reading and did not see the beast double back until it was too late. Minho dropped his scanner and backed away from his console. The human knew details about Baekhyun's death that were not in any official reports, details that only Minho himself remembered. The guilt and shame came flooding back as if the accident had happened yesterday instead of decades ago. You have been trying to make up for that mistake ever since Do-yun continued. Your enhanced tracking abilities are not natural evolution. They are the result of psychological trauma. Your mind enhanced your senses because it could not bear the thought of losing another pack mate the same way. Minho began shaking and could not make it stop. The human was right about everything. The tracking abilities that made him so valuable to hunting packs had developed after Baekhyun's death. His subconscious mind had changed his body. To make sure he would never miss another important signal, Tyke was having his own breakdown at the tactical station. The human had mentioned his strategic failure several times over the past few days, each time adding new details about how those 12 Vex soldiers had died because of his poor planning. Tyke could not concentrate on developing new strategies because his mind kept replaying the old disaster. You know what? The worst part was, Do-yun said directly to Tyke, those soldiers trusted you completely. They followed your plan without question because they believed you would keep them safe. When your strategy failed and they started dying, they probably wondered why their strategist had let them down. Tyke made a low moaning sound and put his hands over his ears, but he could still hear the human's voice. The soldiers who died in his failed operation had indeed trusted him completely. Their final communications had been calls for help and requests for new orders that he could not provide. The irony is that your plan was actually quite good, Do-yun continued. You had accounted for most variables, and your tactical analysis was sound. The failure happened because you did not consider that your enemy might be willing to sacrifice their own forces to achieve victory. You assumed they would behave rationally like Vex warriors do. This was the detail that hurt most, because it was true. Tyke's plan had failed because he could not imagine an enemy commander ordering his own troops to die just to create a tactical advantage. Vex warriors valued their packmates too highly to use such strategies, but other species did not share those values. Jiho tried to maintain command authority, but found himself questioning every decision he made. The humans seemed to know his thoughts before he had them, and could predict his reactions with frightening accuracy. How could he lead his pack when their enemy understood him better than he understood himself? You are wondering if you should call for reinforcements, Do-yun said, as if reading his mind. You think additional ships might give you the advantage you need, but that would just mean more Vex warriors walking into the same trap that killed Kyung. I have prepared for your reinforcements. 2. The human began describing Vex, military protocols, and tactical procedures with perfect accuracy. He knew their standard hunting formations, their communication codes, and their rules of engagement. He talked about Vex honor codes and pack loyalty, as if he had studied their culture for years. Your people value strength and successful hunts above everything else, Do-yun said. If you call for help, and still fail to capture me, your reputation will be destroyed forever. Other packs will see you. As weak commanders who could not handle a single human target, you will never receive important contracts again." This was exactly what Jiho had been thinking, and hearing it spoken aloud made his fears feel more real. The Vex military was built on success and reputation. A failed hunt would mark his pack as failures for the rest of their careers. They would be assigned to easy targets, while other packs got the dangerous and profitable missions. But if you continue hunting me alone, you will all end up like Kyung Do-yun continued. "I do not want to kill you, but I will defend myself if you force me to. The choice is yours. But either way, this hunt ends with your failure. You cannot win against something you do not understand." The transmission ended and left the three Vex alone with their fears and doubts. Each of them was dealing with psychological wounds that went deeper than any physical injury they had ever received. The human had reached into their minds and found their weakest points, then pressed on those points until something broke. Jiho looked at his remaining packmates and saw broken warriors instead of confident hunters. Minho could barely function at his tracking station because he kept seeing images of his dead. Clutch brother Take was paralyzed by memories of his strategic failure and could not develop new plans. The human had not just killed Kyung. He had destroyed the pack from inside their own minds. They were no longer hunters. They were victims of a psychological war. They did not know how to fight. 2 weeks had passed since Kyung's death, and the Blood Fang was running low on supplies. The ship needed fuel and food, but Jiho was afraid to dock at any station where Do-hyun might have prepared another trap. The human had been quiet for 3 days, and that silence was almost worse than his psychological attacks. At least when he was talking, they knew where he was and what he was thinking. Minho sat at his tracking console, staring at displays that showed nothing but empty space. His enhanced senses had become a burden instead of a gift. Every sensor reading made him think of Baekhyun, and every false signal reminded him of the mistake that had cost his Clutch brother's life. He could not concentrate on tracking their target because his mind kept drifting back to that terrible day in the ice caves. Tyke had given up trying to develop new strategies. Every plan he created seemed flawed and dangerous. He would start working on tactical approaches, then remember the 12 soldiers who had died because of his failures. The human had paralyzed his strategic thinking by making him doubt his own abilities. He could not lead them into battle when he no longer trusted his own judgment. Jiho was struggling to hold his pack together, but felt his leadership cracking under the pressure. Do-hyun had exposed all their weaknesses and turned their greatest strengths against them. Their enhanced senses, their strategic planning, and their pack loyalty had all become sources of pain and doubt instead of advantages. A new transmission came through their communication system, but this time it was not just audio. There was also a data package containing star charts and navigation coordinates. Do-hyun's voice filled the bridge, but now he sounded different, more serious and less friendly than before. "I am tired of this game," he said, and his words carried a tone of finality that made all 3 Vex feel afraid. "You have been following me for weeks, but you have not been brave enough to actually fight. You just drift through space while I talk to you about your failures and fears. That is not hunting. That is just pathetic." Jiho felt anger rising in his chest at the humans, mocking words. But underneath the anger was fear, because he knew Do-hyun was right. They had not been hunting him. They had been running away from him while pretending they still had control of the situation. "If you want to finish this hunt, then come to these coordinates." Do-hyun continued, "I will be waiting in the Nexus asteroid field, where you can finally try to capture me. But be warned, this will be your last chance to prove you are still hunters instead of cowards. If you fail here, you will never get another opportunity." The transmission ended and left them staring at the navigation data. The Nexus asteroid field was a dangerous region of space filled with spinning rocks and unpredictable gravity wells. Most ships avoided the area because it was too hazardous for normal travel. But their target was challenging them to follow him there for a final confrontation. "We should not go," Minho said in a voice that shook with fear. "He has had weeks to prepare that asteroid field, just like he prepared the mining station. It will be full of traps, designed to kill us. He wants us to come there so he can finish what he started." Tyke nodded his head in agreement. "The tactical situation is completely in his favor. He knows we are coming and he has chosen the battlefield. We would be flying into a trap with no way to escape if things go wrong." But Jiho felt something stirring inside him that had been dormant for weeks. It was not courage exactly, but it was closer to courage than the fear and doubt he had been feeling. The human was right. About one thing, they were no longer acting like hunters. They had been reduced to frightened prey, hiding in empty space. "We go to the asteroid field," he said in a voice that surprised his packmates with its firmness. "We are Vex warriors, and we do not run away from fights. If this human wants to face us in battle, then we will give him that battle. We may die, but at least we will die as hunters instead of cowards." The Bloodfang changed course and headed toward the Nexus asteroid field. The journey took 6 hours, and during that time, each of the 3 Vex prepared himself mentally for what might be their final hunt. Jiho checked their weapon systems and made sure all their equipment was working properly. Minho calibrated his tracking sensors for the difficult conditions inside the asteroid field. Tyke studied the tactical data and tried to develop some kind of plan, despite his damaged confidence. When they reached the asteroid field, they saw immediately that Do-hyun had been busy. The floating rocks had been moved into new patterns, and some of them had metal devices attached to their surfaces. Scanner readings showed explosive charges, gravity manipulators, and other equipment that could turn the asteroids into weapons. The entire field had been converted into a massive trap waiting to be sprung. "There," his ship Minho said, as his sensors detected the human's vessel deep inside the asteroid field. The ship was small and moved between the spinning rocks with impossible grace, dodging obstacles that should have crews. The Bloodfang dropped out of hyperspace near a dead star system where old mining stations floated like metal ghosts in the darkness. Minho had tracked the human ship's energy signature to this place, and his equipment showed that Do-hyun's vessel was docked at one of the abandoned stations. The station was big and had many levels, but it looked like it had been empty for years. Jiho studied the scanner readings and saw only one life sign inside the station. It had to be their human target, Do-hyun. The scanner also showed that the human's ship was attached to the station's docking bay and did not seem to be preparing to leave. This was perfect because it meant their prey was trapped with nowhere to run. "This is too easy," Tyke said as he looked at the tactical display. "The human has cornered himself in a dead end. We can surround the station and capture him without any problems. He must be more panicked than we thought to make such a basic mistake." Minho nodded and pointed at his tracking screen. "The energy trail ends here, which means the human has been at this station for several hours. He probably thinks he can hide inside the station until we give up and leave. But Vex hunters never give up once they start a hunt." Kyung was checking his capture equipment and making sure his weapons were ready. "I will go in first and flush the target out toward the rest of you," he said. "The station has many corridors, but there is only one human, so he cannot be in all of them at once. Once I find him, he will have nowhere to run." Jiho made the plan for their attack. They would dock their ship at the opposite end of the station from where the human's ship was attached. Then Kyung would enter first and begin searching the corridors, while the others surrounded the station from outside. If the human tried to escape through an airlock or back to his ship, they would be waiting for him. It was a simple plan, but it should work perfectly against one scared target. The Bloodfang moved slowly toward the mining station and attached to one of the docking ports. The station was very quiet, and only emergency lights were working inside most of it. Through the ship's sensors, they could see that the air inside was still good to breathe, but the temperature was colder than normal. The heating systems must have been turned off when the miners left years ago. Kyung put on his armor and made sure his helmet was sealed properly. The armor was black and covered with sharp edges that made him look even more scary than usual. His weapons included a plasma rifle for long-range fighting and metal claws for close combat. He also had capture nets and stun devices for taking the target alive without hurting him too much. "Be careful in there," Jiho said over the communication system. "The station is old and some parts might be damaged. We do not want you falling through broken floors or getting trapped in collapsed sections. Find the human quickly and drive him toward us so we can finish." This hunt Kyung entered the station through the airlock and began moving through the dark corridors. His helmet had night vision, so he could see clearly. Even in the dim emergency lighting, the station was much bigger inside than it looked from outside, with many levels connected by lifts and stairs. It would take time to search all of it, but Kyung was patient and methodical. As he moved deeper into the station, Kyung noticed that something felt wrong. The air smelled strange, and there were chemical odors that should not be present in an abandoned mining facility. His armor had sensors that could detect dangerous gases, but they were not showing anything harmful. Yet something was definitely different about the atmosphere inside the station. Kyung continued searching and began to feel dizzy. The strange smells were getting stronger, and his vision was starting to blur slightly. He tried to contact his packmates, but his radio was making crackling sounds, and he could not get a clear signal. This was very unusual because Vex communication equipment was designed to work in any environment. The dizziness got worse, and Kyung had to stop and lean against a wall to keep from falling down. His enhanced Vex senses were being overwhelmed by something in the air. The chemicals were not poisonous enough to show up on his armor sensors, but they were affecting his nervous system in ways he did not understand. His sharp hearing was picking up sounds that were not really there, and his night vision was showing movement in empty corridors. Kyung tried to turn back toward the airlock, but found that he could not remember which way he had come. The corridors all looked the same, and his usual sense of direction was not working properly. The chemical compounds in the air were making it impossible for him to think clearly. He was lost inside the station, and his senses were failing him, somewhere in the darkness. Kyung heard the sound of metal footsteps moving very quietly. The footsteps were too light to be another Vex, but they had a rhythm that suggested someone was trying to sneak up on him. Kyung raised his plasma rifle and tried to aim toward the sound, but his hands were shaking and he could not hold the weapon steady. A voice spoke from the shadows, and it sounded human. "You are looking for me." Kyung. The voice was calm and did not sound scared at all. "I have been waiting for you to come inside my trap. The air you are breathing has been modified specifically for Vex physiology. Your enhanced senses are now working against you instead of helping you." Kyung fired his plasma rifle toward where the voice came from, but the shot went wide and hit the wall. The bright flash of the weapon made his damaged vision even worse, and now he could barely see anything at all. He tried to move toward the voice, but his legs felt heavy and would not obey his commands properly. The human stepped out of the shadows, and Kyung could see him clearly for the first time. Do-hyun was smaller than any Vex warrior and did not look dangerous at all, but his eyes were cold and calculating like a predator studying its prey. He was holding a small device in his hand that looked like it might be some kind of detonator. "You studied us before. You came here," Do-hyun said as he moved closer to the helpless Vex warrior. "But I studied you much more carefully. I know how your senses work, and I know your weaknesses. This station has been prepared for months, waiting for hunters like you to arrive." Kyung tried to grab the human with his claws, but his movements were too slow and clumsy. Do-hyun stepped aside easily and pressed the button on his device. There was a loud explosion somewhere behind Kyung, and the Vex warrior felt metal fragments hitting his armor. The explosion had been perfectly placed to cause maximum damage without killing him instantly. As Kyung fell to the ground, His armor systems began failing, and his radio finally managed to send one message back to his packmates. It was not words, but just the sound of his dying breath. The strongest member of Jiho's hunting team had been killed by a single human using nothing but chemistry and explosives. On the Bloodfang, the other three, Vex received Kyung's final transmission and felt something they had never experienced before in all their years of hunting. Fear their packmate had been the strongest and most experienced fighter among them. If Kyung could be killed by their target, then none of them were safe. Jiho immediately ordered a retreat back to their ship. They had to rethink their approach to this hunt. The human was clearly not the panicked prey they had expected. Instead, he was something much more dangerous. A predator who had been waiting for them to walk into. His trap as the Bloodfang pulled away from the mining station. Minho scanned the facility and found Kyung's body lying in one of the corridors. The station had been modified in dozens of ways, with chemical dispensers and explosive devices hidden. Throughout the structure, their target had spent months preparing this place and turning it into a weapon designed specifically to kill Vex hunters. For the first time in their lives, Jiho and his remaining pack members realized they might be the ones being hunted. The airlock of the Bloodfang opened with a soft hissing sound, and Do-hyun stepped inside the Vex hunting ship. He was smaller than any of them had expected and looked fragile compared to their reptilian bulk, but his eyes held a coldness that made all three surviving Vex warriors step backward despite their natural predator instincts. He carried no weapons, but somehow felt more dangerous than Kyung had ever been. Jiho, Minho, and Taek stood together in their damaged ship and stared at the human, who had destroyed their pack and their confidence. None of them spoke because they did not know what to say. They had expected to die when he boarded their ship, but instead he seemed to want to talk to them face to face. "Hello," Jiho Doyun said in a calm voice that showed no anger or hatred. "You look surprised to see me. I suppose you expected me to kill you from a distance like I did with your asteroid field trap, but I wanted to speak with you personally before this ends." Jiho found his voice and asked the question that had been bothering him for weeks. "Why did you not just escape when you had the chance? You could have hidden anywhere in the galaxy, but instead you led us into trap after trap. Why did you want to fight us?" Do-hyun smiled, but it was not a happy expression, because running away would have solved nothing. He said, "Your Galactic Council would have just sent more hunters after me and after every other human who tries to leave Earth. The only way to stop the hunting was to show you why humans were quarantined in the first place." The human began walking around their bridge, looking at their equipment and scanning displays with professional interest. He moved like someone who understood their technology, even though he had never been on a Vex ship before. His casual confidence made the three warriors feel like prisoners in their own vessel. "You still do not understand what you have done," Do-hyun continued. "The quarantine around Earth was not imposed by the Galactic Council. It was requested by humanity itself. We asked to be isolated because we knew we were too dangerous to be trusted around other species." Minho made a confused sound and asked, "How can that be true?" "The council report said humans were quarantined. Because of your violent nature and unpredictable behavior, they said you were a threat to galactic peace." Do-hyun nodded his head slowly. "That is all true," he said, "but it was not the whole truth. Yes, we are violent and unpredictable, but we are also smart enough to know what that means. We studied the other species in the galaxy and realized that if we joined galactic civilization, we would eventually dominate it. Not through conquest, but through simple adaptation." He stopped walking and looked directly at each of them in turn. "Humans evolve faster than any other known species," he explained. "We adapt to new situations within generations, while other species take thousands of years to change. We knew that if we spread throughout the galaxy, We would eventually replace everyone else, not through war, but through being better at survival. That is why Earth requested isolation. Do-hyun continued. We did not want to be responsible for the extinction of other intelligent species. So we stayed on our home planet and developed our own technology while staying out of galactic affairs. We were trying to be responsible members of the galaxy by not participating in it. Itaik was listening carefully and beginning to understand the implications. But the council decided to hunt escaped humans anyway, he said slowly. That changed everything because now humans had to defend themselves. Exactly, Do-hyun replied. When your people sent hunters after us, you turned a contained situation into an active threat. Every human who escapes Earth now knows that the galaxy sees us as prey to be hunted. That knowledge changes us from willing prisoners into something much more dangerous. The human walked over to their tactical display and began pointing at different star systems on the map. There are 17 other humans scattered across the galaxy, he said. Each one escaped from Earth for different reasons, and each one has been hiding in different sectors. But now they all know about the hunters. He touched a control, and the display zoomed in on specific locations. These humans have been watching what happened to your pack, and they have been learning from my methods. Each one is now preparing their own defenses and their own traps. You have not just failed to catch one escaped human, you have taught all of them how to fight back. Jiho felt a chill run through his body as he realized the full scope of what had happened. Their hunt had not been about capturing one target. It had been about testing human capabilities, and the test had revealed that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had suspected. You could have just told the council about human abilities, Jiho said. Why did you have to kill Kyung and destroy our pack to make your point? Do-hyun looked sad for the first time since boarding their ship. Because words would not have been enough, he said. The galaxy needed to see what humans are capable of when we are threatened. Your pack was chosen because you are the best. Hunters in Vex space. If you could not capture one human, then no one could. He gestured toward their damaged ship and continued. Now when you return to the Galactic Council, you will carry a message that cannot be ignored. Humans are not prey to be hunted. We are apex predators that have been choosing to stay hidden. The quarantine was protecting you from us, not us from you. Minho was shaking as the full truth became clear. So the 17 escaped humans are no longer hiding, he whispered. They are preparing to become active threats to anyone who tries to hunt them. Yes, Do-hyun confirmed, and each one will be more dangerous than I am because they have learned from my mistakes. They have watched how I defeated your pack, and they will develop even better methods. The galaxy has awakened something that was meant to stay sleeping. Tyke collapsed into a chair as he realized the strategic implications. 17 humans with these abilities scattered across the galaxy, he said, each one capable of destroying hunting packs and converting other humans to their methods. The threat will grow exponentially. Do-hyun nodded grimly. That is why the hunts must stop immediately, he said. The Galactic Council has a choice. They can end the hunting programs and return to the original quarantine agreement, or they can face a war against an enemy that gets stronger every time you try to fight it. The human turned to leave, but stopped at the airlock. I am giving you this choice as well, he said to the 3 Vex warriors. You can return to the council and report that humans are too dangerous to hunt, or you can stay here and become part of the growing threat yourselves. Minho and Taek immediately moved toward the airlock, desperate to escape the ship and the human who had destroyed their lives. But Jiho remained behind, fascinated. Despite his fear, he had spent his entire life hunting the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, but had never encountered anything like Do-hyun. Why are you different? The Vex commander asked. What makes humans so much more dangerous than other species? Do-hyun paused and looked back at him. We evolved as prey animals that learned to fight back, he explained. Every other apex predator in the galaxy evolved to hunt, but humans evolved to survive being hunted. We developed intelligence, creativity, and adaptability because we had to, or we would have gone extinct. That is why we are so dangerous when threatened. Do-hyun continued. We do not think like predators who expect their prey to run and hide. We think like prey animals that have decided to turn and fight. We use every resource, every trick, and every advantage we can find, because our ancestors who did not do these things died. He stepped through the airlock, but left it open behind him. Your council made the mistake of treating us like normal prey, he said. But there is nothing normal about a species that survived by refusing to give up. You awakened something that evolution spent millions of years creating. A prey animal that became more dangerous than any predator. The human ship detached from the Blood Fang and disappeared into the asteroid field, leaving the 3 surviving Vex alone with their damaged ship and their new understanding of what they had faced. Jiho sent a message to the Galactic Council, warning them that the human threat was far worse than anyone had imagined. But deep down, he knew it was already too late. The hunt was over, but the war was just beginning. The galaxy had awakened, its most dangerous enemy, and there was no way to put that threat back to sleep. The apex predators had learned they were not at the top of the food chain after all.